18 years after Disney's animated film premiered, the stage adaptation of Hunchback of Notre Dame has finally arrived in North America. But does it translate well on stage? Answer is yes. Yes, it does, and then some. This is my review of La Jolla Playhouse's production of Hunchback of Notre Dame. Please take note that even though I try not to go too much into detail about the show, there are some spoilers here and there. Before we get started, here's my history with Hunchback of Notre Dame. As a kid, I saw this movie in theaters and recognized it was special just from the start. Over the years, it has become my favorite Disney movie. Sometime in high school, I discovered the Berlin production and found the soundtrack, which I obsessed over. So when I heard that Disney Theatrics was finally bringing Hunchback of Notre Dame to North America, I knew I had to take the chance and see the show for myself, no matter where, no matter when. So let's jump right into it, shall we? The La Jolla Playhouse. It's not a big theater per se. It is cozy, and I don't think there's any bad seats in the house. When you do step inside that theater, you automatically notice the stage. It's beautiful, simple, but very inviting. To me, the beams and the wooden frames were semi-reminiscent of the Festival of Fools show at Disneyland. So let's get to the tone of this show. The way the story is told is somewhat like a medieval play. If you're familiar with the Royal Theater at Disneyland, specifically in the Fantasyland area, it's somewhat like that, meaning actors will act and sometimes will start narrating in third person. I think also to compare La Jolla's production with Berlin or even the movie, the tone is a little bit darker. And to confirm, yes, Esmeralda dies, and Quasimodo is actually the one who kills Frollo in the end. Would this show be suitable for children? Not exactly. I mean, probably the best age to bring someone to see the show is over the age of 12. I did notice a few younger kids sitting in the 2 rows before us, and you could tell they were getting a little restless during the slow parts. Another story difference compared to the movie is this production? Well, there's something about Frollo. Frollo, Frollo, Frollo. The show is mostly about Frollo. Well, not mostly, but really focused on Frollo. Did I mention Frollo? Okay, all jokes aside. Frollo is actually a lot more sympathetic in this story. More human. You could really see him struggling with the sins and the impure thoughts that ultimately led to his fall from grace. It was wonderful to watch. Don't get me wrong though, he is still a creepy motherfucker. Tormented creepiness is perfectly executed by Patrick Page. Man, what a voice. The perfect tone to bring Frollo to life on stage. And because they got the perfect man to play Frollo, it only makes sense because he perfectly carries the story forward. Then we have Quasimodo, played by Michael Arden. I was really mesmerized watching Michael on stage. It is implied that Quasimodo is semi-deaf in this production, and because of that, Michael uses what looks to be sign language on screen when communicating to the other characters. I thought it was a really nice touch. He was so tormented and sympathetic, and you just really wanted Quasimodo to have a friend in the end. Speaking of friends, the gargoyles are not in this version of Hunchback. That means no wisecracking jokes, and that also means no a guy like you in the show. The gargoyles are replaced by the ensemble, who in turn were the voices of the bells. It was a really nice touch because every time they spoke to Quasimodo, they would chime a little bell while they were communicating with him. Moving from the bell tower to the festival below, we have Clopin. Clopin is played by Eric Lieberman. And unfortunately, Gypsy King fans, he is terribly underutilized in this version. Clopin is definitely reduced to a minor character in this case, whereas in Berlin he served as a pivotal role of the narrator. This also means that during the Bells of Notre Dame, meaning both the opening song and the ending finale, we don't get to hear that beautiful high note he sings like the movie or even in the Berlin production. As the Festival of Fools begins, enter Phoebus, played by Andrew Simonsky. This was actually a surprise to me because I didn't care for Phoebus in the Disney movie, and I ended up really liking Phoebus in this version. You watch him evolve from a swaggering playboy to a committed man, truly and totally devoted to Esmeralda. And of course there's Esmeralda herself, played by Ciara Renee. Her introduction is fantastic, and I found her quite likable as soon as she stepped out. Ciara gives this really great sense of charm and wonderful confidence to her character. And you can see why three men end up falling for Esmeralda. Let's hear about those songs, shall we? Okay, let's get this out of the way. Hellfire was amazing. Patrick Page definitely brought the house down with this one. It was just him and the congregation, and that's all that was needed because him singing was enough to get the goosebumps rising. I also have to mention that the lighting during this song was phenomenal. It was very subtle at the start, and then by the end of the song, the stage was bathed in pure red light, and it was somewhat haunting. Some of the songs from Der Glockner did not make the cut for the new North American adaptation, but to compensate, there were a few new songs added to the show. My personal favorite from the new bunch is Rhythm of the Tambourine, basically Esmeralda's introduction song. It was really catchy and defined her character so well, basically saying, "I'm sexy, look at me, adore me." I also really like the Tavern song, which showcased what the people of Notre Dame do for fun when they're not going to Mass or participating in the Festival of Fools. That isn't to say that all these new songs were great. I really could not care for the song that opened up Act 2, Flight into Egypt. It was a little too comedic considering the dark tone of the show, and plus the visuals were really distracting. Personally, I would have chosen A Guy Like You, but that's just me. And what was with Court of Miracles? Why change the tune? Why change the pacing? Yes, I wanted to hear Clopin sing more, but what? And finally, my favorite song from the Berlin production made its way to the North American production. Made of Stone. To be honest, I paid $100 to see this song performed live, and Michael Arden did it complete justice. His voice cracked, yet he delivered the notes so powerfully. And not only was he crying on stage, but there was snot coming down his nose. That is excellent. However, his mucus did spray into someone in the first row, but given that we are in San Diego, splash zones are to be expected. Anyways, I had chills the entire time. And from this point on until the very end of the show, those chills did not stop. Act 2 was just so exciting for me. It was emotional, it was raw, it was intense. Once Esmeralda is put to the stake, I was on the edge of my seat the entire time. There were barely any props used during the show. Actors, simple barricades, even some benches took the role as set pieces, inspiring the audience to use their imagination to fill in the gaps, which also proves that you don't need a lot of fancy details and fancy set design to carry on a beautiful and powerful story such as Hunchback of Notre Dame. There was this really cool part where Quasimodo decides to save Esmeralda and climbs down the bell tower, and he hides behind the statues of apostles on the cathedral in order not to get noticed. Here, the ensemble would pose as different saints, and it took me a moment before I understood what they were doing. It was really impressive. The special effects were really ingenious and really simple. Surprisingly, when Frollo met his demise, I found it somewhat unsettling. I don't want to give it away. It is simple, but it also made the audience jump in their seats. Now here is a riddle to guess if you can. Would I watch this show again? Obviously! I would watch it again in a heartbeat. Prior to this, I have seen Beauty and the Beast and The Lion King on stage, and Hunchback has definitely beaten those two. It was dramatic, it was compelling, it was exciting. Hell, even its social commentary is still relevant today. Not to mention Alan Menken and Stephen Schwartz's music just really resonate with the soul and heart. Yes, I may be biased that this is my favorite Disney adaptation of all time, but you can't help but deny that this is Disney's version of Les Miserables, which is also another fantastic musical. And of course from the same author, Victor Hugo. Hunchback deserves to be on Broadway. It deserves an official cast recording. It deserves success and praise and all the standing ovations that anyone can give. Fans of the movie and fans of Berlin will enjoy this show. It's different, but very familiar. Most importantly, it does ask that same question. What makes a monster and what makes a man? Disney fans, Hunchback fans, musical fans, you cannot miss this show. If it comes to your town, you have to see it. I give this show 4.5 stars out of 5. It's that amazing.